Hi, my name is Jeffrey Chu, and I'm a Logan alum who graduated in class of 2013, and I am currently a student at UC Berkeley studying bioengineering. The reason why I chose this major is because of a personal traumatic incident that happened that hit a little bit too close to home. And it was because of my grandmother, who was admitted to the hospital during my sophomore year of high school, and she had an effect of her tuberculosis. She had to get a tracheostomy, which is where the doctors make a hole in your throat and put a ventilator into there for you to breathe. And I felt like that was a little bit too traumatizing for me to handle. And throughout her surgical procedures and throughout her analysis of her CO2 levels, I felt like there was a change that needed to be made. And so in the wake of that painful revelation, my desire to join the healthcare field strengthened immensely. And I decided that the technology that my grandmother needed doesn't exist. And I want to be there to create that opportunity for other patients out there. And so as a biomedical engineer, I can help create these solutions to help alleviate the pain that my family endured throughout these years. So enough of my personal story. I know that was a little bit too much, but let's talk about college. So my first year of college was an interesting mixture of pros and cons, and I felt like it's nice to have different things to weigh out your college experience, because having all pros doesn't mean that's the best thing ever, because you're bound to have different things to challenge yourself in life. And I felt like that's what Cal did for me. I felt like my first year was a little bit challenging for me. It was a very challenging transition for me, and I felt like there were a lot of things that I could have done differently. And of course, I think a lot of people can say that as well, but throughout my first semester at Cal, I felt like I didn't know how to find my group of people. And mainly because I had nobody that I knew there. I probably only knew 2 or 3 Logan alum, and I didn't keep in contact with them at all. And I eventually isolated myself a lot for the first semester, and I didn't know who to go to or where to find my support. And eventually I ended up not going to a lot of my classes, which you probably shouldn't do that. And because of the class sizes at a public university, they're huge. They can be the hundreds, and for some classes they can even be up to 1,000. And it's hard for students to actually understand that type of environment unless they're actually in one. And I didn't know about that going to Cal, and I felt like, wow, like I really admire having those 30 to 40 class sizes back in high school. I had that one-on-one attention that I could get with my high school teachers, and it wasn't like that in college, because you are stuck in this environment with so many people that it gets intimidating. And come my second semester, that's when I actually figured out, maybe it's time to get up my game and to really challenge myself more, instead of just sitting around in the classroom and not really knowing how to approach teachers. So I decided to go to office hours more often. I went to my discussion groups to ask about questions, and you start to understand how college really works. And I think that throughout my second semester, I decided to find my niche and find my group, and I decided to join different clubs on campus, and I decided to start working at a research lab. And I felt like a lot of these different things I did eventually helped me find my place, and I felt like college is a place for me to be, and it really takes a while, I can tell you that. And that's kind of an experience I feel like nobody else can tell you unless if you really try it on your own. And trust me, it does take a while. So like I said, my major is bioengineering, and one of the things I really expected from Cal was to have this really rigorous and really prestigious bioengineering program, because one of the things I was looking for while I was visiting colleges was what that major could offer me. And what I was interested in was a concentration called cell and tissue engineering, where you try to engineer different types of molecular biology techniques in order to understand how these processes can help affect medical technology. And after visiting many colleges, I felt like a lot of the curriculums were different than what I expected. It was a lot more focused on kind of like double E stuff, which is like electrical engineering stuff, and that wasn't really my thing. So I chose Cal for the reason as to, my major, and I also chose it because I visited the college and I felt like this was a place to be, and I felt like, wow, the students were amazing, and this was during Cal Day, and I felt like it was, it's that thing when you go on the campus and you feel like you find your niche, and it's really hard to explain. You really have to try it out yourself and just go to a college and feel like, look at its environment, talk to the people, and figure out whether that's the place for you or not. I would say definitely the people, and that makes a huge difference in your college experience, because the people are ultimately who you talk to and who you interact with, and I mean that in terms of students, faculty, and sometimes even just the hobos on the street. No joke. They can really make your day sometimes when they, strike up a conversation with you about how their life is going, and you really have a different perspective on things once you get to talk to different people. And I feel like the other thing is that the groups on campus, namely one that I decided to join a dance group this semester, which I thought was the last thing I would do in college, but I did it, and it was a hip hop group, and I felt like, it was the people who really felt like a family to me, and I felt like I found my group there because, it was a different experience, and I met these people from all these different majors, and I feel like, oh wow, like, I never knew that, like this major existed, or I never knew that, these things can happen at school, and I felt like, the people there really do help you run your life, kind of. Another thing is residential life, which it varies whether you're a commuter or not. Some students who live close enough to home from their university will just commute, but I decided to live on campus for my first year, and I lived in one of the residential halls at Cal, and it was a group of about 20 or so people on my floor, and I eventually bonded with each one of them after my first semester or so. I was still struggling with my first semester, and I was isolating myself, and I didn't really want to talk to anyone, but you eventually find that your support group really comes from the people you live with, because these are the people that I see every single day of my life. And it's different because back at home, the only people you see are your parents and your siblings and whoever else is living in your household. But once you get to college, you see these people every single day on your floor, and it's like a family to you. They actually they make a really good support system, because sometimes you want to talk about something, and the closest people who you might be with are the people on your floor. They know you well enough because they know you from the start for sure, and some people might be even the same major as you. So I think that's one of the most interesting aspects of college, and you find that your floor will probably be the closest people you'll ever meet in college, and after your first year, you might decide not to live in the dorms and you'll live in an apartment. But regardless of where you go, you'll probably go back to those people who you've met in your first year in your residential halls, and think of them as like the family you go back to, aside from the ones that you go back to at home, but that's a different story. Another reason why I decided to choose Cal is because I received a middle class scholarship, which is a scholarship for students who have parents in the middle class income range, and also have a somewhat scholarly achievement for their GPA in high school. I forgot what the exact benchmark is, but there is a certain GPA in order to meet the scholarship, and if you decide to retain that throughout college, you will continue to receive that scholarship. And I think that's an incentive to a lot of students who are in the middle class range, because middle class students tend to struggle the most, especially since they don't have enough to receive the aid, but at the same time they don't have enough to pay for college. And so, you should probably decide to choose Cal if you get into, because they do have that scholarship incentive for you. And a lot of the other UCs don't have this yet. So that's one of the reasons why I chose Cal, because, in all honesty, Cal wasn't actually my first choice. It was actually another UC, but there was a lot of benefits that Cal decided to give me, and one of them was definitely the middle class scholarship.